A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Mr. Mehul Kuwadia, who has played a vital role towards setting up of a company called Grey Cells as a first generation entrepreneur. Today we are here to learn something about Mr. Kuwadia and his company. A very good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, tell me something about yourself and your company.
As far as my background is concerned, I would start when I did my MBA. I passed out in 85 from Bombay University. I topped the university. I specialized in HR, and then I worked in the industry for 10 years, from 85 to 95 in 5 different organizations. I started as a management trainee, and my final assignment was as associate director, HR. And around the year 95, I thought, let me do something on my own. So that's how in 95, 1st June 1995, I set up Grey Cells, one-man show. And it's been now a long journey of 19 years and a very fruitful journey. In these 19 years, Grey Cells has become India's #1 trainers training company. We are the fastest growing training consultancy in India. We have delivered approximately 75,000 man days of training. We have serviced about 1,500 clients, both from India and abroad. Grey Cells has pioneered in the area of trainers training. So, in the year 1995, when I started, there were very few institutions who were doing train the trainer programs. And these are all top class institutes like IIMs and MDIs and TMTC, ASCII, Hyderabad and all. So when I started this business, I saw it as an opportunity for a lot of other people to become trainers, because these were very expensive programs. And to say that Grey Cells created a market which is train the trainer market, and within that more specifically a market which is topic based train the trainer market, would not be wrong. So we are market leaders, and by the time it was 2001, we were considered as India's #1 trainers training company rather. CNBC, is the one who did research, and they identified us, and they came and they did about 15-minute interview with us. So in a nutshell, I would say today Grey Cells is a very holistic HR company. It is in the area of consultancy, it is in the area of trainers training, it is in the area of managerial training, psychometric assessments, and very senior level placement services.
So what was that particular need which you felt, or particular drive which took you towards HR?
I would say by the year 1993, that is 8 years of my career, I was becoming clear that I am growing in my career very fast, and very soon I'll reach the top, and then there won't be much to look forward to. And also I had the desire of doing something on my own. So I saw myself venturing as a consultant, as an independent consultant, as an organization in few years' time. So I started preparing for it. I could say by the year 1993 I started preparing. I did market scan. I identified which are the areas where probably there is a lot of scope, there are no consultancies available. And one of the areas which I identified was, as I shared with you, train the trainer. So I was working as head of HR, and then I realized that the next important exposure that I should have is how does one do consultancy. So I switched over from an industry job to a consulting job. So to really give an answer to the question that you asked me, that what was the need? The need was, I had reached the height of my career, and there was nothing really much to look forward to. Second was, there was a desire to do something on your own. Third, I would say, is I already had thought about such a scenario, so I prepared myself I identified the areas where I would like to launch myself. So all this put together, had a compelling reason on me in 1995, and that was one day when I said enough is enough, and now let me start on my own. That was May 1995, and on 1st June 1995, I started on my own.
So what made you to get into this business? What are the difficulties which you faced while getting into the HR field?
As I shared with you, it was a pre-planned move. So from 1993 onwards, it was at the back of my mind that within the next few years I have to start on my own. So all the kind of resources that would be required when you start on your own in terms of training material, content, etc., I had collected. I had also worked out on a small business plan as to how one can move ahead. I gave myself 2 years saying that okay, let me try this on my own. If I'm not successful for 2 years, then I'll go back to the industry and then never ever think in terms of becoming an entrepreneur on your own. But if I'm successful, then I continue further. Yes, there were a few teething problems, there were a few issues in terms of getting assignments and all. I had anticipated that I would start getting assignments at a certain pace, in a certain manner, and my first year turnover would be an X amount, which didn't happen. But by the end of the first year, when I looked at my status and when I did a small SWOT analysis, I identified that I had enough number of inquiries on hand, and which should help me survive in the second year. So that's how I decided that let me continue and not, think in terms of going back. So really speaking, there weren't much difficulties because all that was there was sort of pre-planned and pre-thought about, and things were quite good enough.
So tell us something about your educational background and the family background which was what you belong.
I basically come from a very humble family background. My father hasn't been a businessman or a successful professional. He has been, working in clerical kind of positions. So I come from a background like that. However, I am a person who probably from the very childhood has been a very determined kind of a person and a very, very focused. So that's the reason I did BA with psychology, then I did MA with industrial psychology, then I did masters in HR from Bombay University. I have a diploma in training and development. Apart from that, I have a few certificate courses here and there. That's what is my educational background and family also. When I did BA with psychology, people in my family actually could not understand, what am I doing and why am I doing it and what could be the future of it. There were even comments, like, he's doing arts because, there are too many girls over there and he's interested in girls. So, it was a confused state. It was a very different area which I had picked up. And I was lucky enough that there were two of them who called me for personal talk and advised me and guided me as to how I can move ahead and take it further. So that's the kind of family background and educational background that I come from.
So what was the age at which you came into the field?
Jay, you'll be very surprised that as I shared with you, when I started my career, I did my MBA, it was 85, I was 25 years old. And when I made the decision of becoming an entrepreneur, that was in the year 95, I was 35 years old. That was a time when I was at the top of my career, I was head of HR, I had a company flat, company car, and all the kind of perquisites that you can think about. And, and it was a make and break decision for me. So people generally become consultants, you would have seen around, kind of a retirement thing or, after having achieved or done a few things in life. So typically you find a whole lot of people who are consultants after 50, 55 and all. But in my case, it's not so. In my case, as I shared with you, it's a make or a break decision. I gave up my, gave up my very successful career at the age of 35 and started my consultancy. Today, I am 54 years old.
So are you socially active in some kind of NGOs or the things like that?
Yes, I have been. I am very active. As I shared with you, right from the year 93 onwards, I was very clear that I would like to start something on my own. So I started working on my public image, and because as a consultant you need to have a very strong public image and a public opinion. That was the time when I started writing in the Ascent section of Times of India. You see the Ascent today, but in those days in the Ascent, there used to be a half-page article by Indian authors, and four of my articles have been published in the Ascent section of Times of India, and out of that, two have been published in the Best of Ascent. They have prepared a booklet. So that was one starting point. Because of that, what had happened is there were thousands of people across the country who read those articles and who became aware that there is somebody called Mehul Kuwadia, and a lot of them found out my addresses and wrote letters to me, and I interacted with them. So that was one thing which I did. Second thing which I did was I became active in professional circles. So I was already a member of Bombay Management Association, but I started taking a little more active interest. I was also a member of Indian Society for Training and Development, which is a specialized society for the trainers. And there also, I started taking an active interest. Today I am associated with many organizations. I am an independent director with Jet King Info Train Limited. I am associated, as I shared with you, with Bombay Management Association, Indian Society for Training and Development. I also represented American Society of Training and Development in India. I am associated with an organization called JEET. JEET is a community-based organization. It's Jain Education and Empowerment Trust. I am also executive committee member, rather core committee member of Zalawad Business Forum. It is also a community-based forum.
So what would you have been doing if not in this field?
If not an entrepreneur, obviously I would have continued working as an employee, and I would have been probably a director HR or a VP HR of some large organization.
So tell us something about the support which you received from your family while changing your job, as you said before, while the gap which you had experienced from your job to from becoming an entrepreneur.
Since the transition was quite smooth, I did not really experience too much of financial problems or emotional requirements in terms of frustrations and things not happening. Honestly speaking, there weren't scenarios where one sort of crashes down and requires a whole lot of support from the family members. So since that didn't happen, it was a very smooth transition. So I had the kind of support which I always had, even while I was working as an employee.
So tell us something about the risk and the consequences which you faced currently in the competitive business world.
There I have created two markets. One is train the trainer market, where I pioneered the concept in India. It was already there, but I was the first independent entrepreneur to venture into the field and compete with institutions like IIMs and all. Then again in the year 2001, I identified that there is going to be a big market for psychometric assessments. And given my background in the field of psychology, having BA with psychology, masters in industrial psychology, I thought I could enter that market. So consequences are some product lines we had to close, and some product lines there is a lot of competition. You have competitors because you created a market. Today train the trainer market is very, very competitive. When we started psychometrics, there were very few people who were doing psychometrics. You could count them like 4 or 5 people on your fingertips. right? But today there are hundreds of people who have ventured into psychometrics because the market has exploded in that.
With this, we would like to conclude our interview. We would like to thank Mr. Mehul Kuwadia for sparing his valuable time and instilling a valuable thought in our young minds. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time.
My pleasure.